Welcome to the Ignorance is Strength podcast. I'm your host, Fabian motherfucking Ojeda, and I don't know shit, but that's okay. All right, let's get this shit started. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignorance is Strength podcast. Hope you all enjoyed the previous episode with the return of author John Bukowski. Definitely check his books out if you haven't. But I'm back today with a brand new guest. Super excited to have him on. Former WWE Superstar, current Impact Wrestling, the Director of Authority, Mr. Anthony Corelli, a.k.a. Santino Marella. How you doing today, man?
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining me. So, you know, I know there's a lot of things I want to talk about, and I don't want to go down like the whole Wikipedia of your career because, you know, people can look that up. People, can check that out if they have any questions. So I do want to touch on some, really like highlights that I remember, and before I get there, I just want to, quickly ask, how did you get into pro wrestling? I was reading that, you were into like judo. I think you also wrestled in high school and things like that. So how did you get into pro wrestling?
Yeah, I mean, I was always a fan of pro wrestling. Of course, I would, I used to imagine myself doing it. Even when I was on the national judo team, after judo practice, we'd fool around, pretend we're pro wrestlers. But the way in was like, how do you ever get in, right? And then when I was in university, there was a guy, a teammate on my university wrestling team. His dad was in the WWF back in the day and had a school. And as soon as I heard that, I knew that I'd made a connection that was going to, be a life-changing connection type thing. So finished university, went to teachers college and got everything out of the way. And then we decided to buckle down and apply ourselves. And kind of, I had a feeling that I was born for this in the sense of, I was always a showman. I was a grappler. Even when I was a kid, I used to get my aunt to at Christmas dinner. I'd stand on a chair and she would like constantly introduce me. I'd make her introduce me to the family, and I knew I was supposed to be on some form of stage, but I couldn't. I'm not a musician, or I don't dance, or I thought maybe it was acting, but this was the art form that I was destined to do.
Yeah, for sure. And I could definitely see that, entertainment is the big key word there, right? So keeping people entertained and whatnot. And what a way to debut on big TV there for the WWE, right? Because like I always relate that moment to kind of like, when I was watching like, 1, 2, 3 Kid and things like that. That's like a 1, 2, 3 Kid moment right there, right? Something that you're watching, you're like, that wasn't supposed to happen, was it? Right. And so, your story of coming out as the guy in the crowd and winning the Intercontinental Championship was really cool. And I've seen, interviews you said it's a life-changing moment. So what was debuting like for you?
Man, it's imagine you're a baseball player and your dream is to one day play for the Yankees, and you're in the developmental system, and then one day you get a call and you're starting on Monday night, for the Yankees. So it's weird because, it's always the goal. The goal is to make it there. The goal is to be a WWE superstar. And then while it's happening, you're just like, oh my God, like, is it really happening? Is this real? Can I mess it up? How many chances do I get? There's all these things running through your head. But luckily we I'd say we hit that segment out of the park just because so many people remember it and so many people believed in it. It was so weird. Like so many people were watching Raw that night, like there wasn't a lot of people that said they heard about it and they had to watch it. Like everyone was watching Raw that day for some reason. It was crazy.
Yeah, and you mentioned that because I wasn't really watching that much at the time myself because, at that time I was already an adult and starting to work and things like that. But you're right. For some reason, it's just kind of like I was watching it, right? And I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like I said, it reminded me of the night that 1, 2, 3 Kid beat Razor Ramon, or like, to like a lesser extent, like Barry Horowitz, finally getting the win, right? And it was really kind of like a surprise moment. I think these days, it's really hard to get like a surprise moment like that. You get so many people like dirt sheets and people on the internet, right? They spoil everything, but that was really cool and memorable, and you're able to talk about it over a decade later because it really was a surprise.
Yeah, Vince was always big on something that has never been done before. And this is one of those things. I mean, Carlito won the title on his debut, but it wasn't from the audience. So to have someone, from Italy across the world come out of the audience and win, that had never been done. So I know that that definitely appealed to Vince. And yeah, I guess it was pretty historic, actually, now that I look back.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you came in as kind of like, an unknown and whatnot, but I know that in developmental, you were kind of like a different character altogether, right? So you were like I was like a Russian badass MMA kind of, character, yeah. Right? And I don't know if that's how they had you initially coming in, but how was that the idea to kind of have the same kind of character come in at first?
Well, no, I mean, Rip Rogers gave me the nickname Boris just in class. That was my nickname. And I was still pretty new to OVW when he gave me the nickname. And so everyone started calling me Boris in class. And I'm like, damn, what the hell am I going to do with this name? This is my nickname now. Because you don't want to have your real name, your nickname, your gimmick name. So my first coach ever was Don Koloff. That was my friend in university. His dad was Don Koloff. So I thought, man, since everyone's calling me Boris already, maybe I'll ask Coach Don Koloff if I could use the Koloff and attach it to the Boris, because I know there's Boris Zukov and Boris Malenko and Ivan Koloff, but I don't think there had been a combination of Boris Koloff. So that's what I was in the beginning. And then Paul Heyman had an idea for me to debut on OVW TV as Boris Alexiev. He wanted to do a little bit more serious character, and he had stayed one night after or during my practice up in the rafters and was watching my training, and I guess word had gotten out that I had this shoot style background, and that was actually one. I mean, obviously going to Raw is important, but debuting on OVW TV was equally monumental.
Right. So that's like definitely getting a foot in the door, establishing things and whatnot. But coming into WWE, your initial like character, or whatever, they were going for, it didn't last, right? And so you switched to like, what everybody knows you as now, and the more comedic, Santino Marella, right? How did that come about? Was that kind of like your idea? Did somebody, in the back kind of see that and are like, we're going to switch gears here? Or was it kind of like The Rock, where the fans weren't feeling it and, there had to be some kind of a pivot?
Yeah, no, the fans weren't feeling it. I mean, the WWE Universe, as you know, does not like to be force-fed anything. And they were kind of being force-fed. This guy came out of the audience and he beat this guy this week and had a lucky victory against Shelton Benjamin and Chris Masters. And people are like, yeah, right, man. Don't tell us to get behind this guy. And there was one pay-per-view where Umaga got the title back. And he just like obliterated me. And the audience was like, one more time. And I'm like, damn, these people want me dead, So the discussion was, there's something there. We have to be able to, unlock it. So let's try and heal. And if that doesn't work, then maybe see you later, right? So luckily it worked. And as soon as I turned heel, I immediately started, tickling Vince's funny bone. And that's whose funny bone you got to tickle to get to have a job. So luckily Vince liked that style of comedy, and that's what stuck.
And I think, obviously, right, that was the right move, right? And so, people remember so much about your character. And I think it's not just, well, if you're looking at it, it's not really even the matches, right? It's more so the mannerisms, the way you were talking, the all the crazy things like the Cobra, right? The strut to the ring and all that. How the hell did you come up with those things, man? Because they're so silly, right? But like they're memorable.
Yeah, each thing was different, To be honest, most things are something I had somewhere along the way in life. And I just implemented, like, the Cobra was something I was taught by in Japan in a bar. And the speed walking thing, God, we used to do it. We used to joke around and do speed walking like for warm-ups for judo. And I was always really fast at it, And where I grew up, all my friends, all their parents are from Europe, whether it's Malta, Croatia, Greece, Italy, Portugal, and all the parents kind of have these funny accents, funny expressions. So I had tons of material to choose from growing up. I grew up in a very funny school, everyone was always laughing, cracking jokes, like most schools, but we had a very diverse ethnic makeup of the students. So, I had tons of material.
How important is that, the whole character thing? Because I think, myself, I'm an old school fan. I love, like the Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior days, obviously Attitude Era where things started getting a little more like, blur the lines real, right? But I think nowadays, a lot of fans that are very vocal online, a lot of even the younger wrestlers, right? They think that, the whole like in-ring product is the most important and things like that. And of course, yes, that's super important. You got to be competent not to hurt anybody, right? But how important, how much weight would you give the character as opposed to what's in the ring?
I think a good starting point is 50-50, when you think about some of your favorite wrestlers, a lot of your memories are not the actual wrestling, right? Maybe for Hulk Hogan, it's, firing up and the leg drop, and the rest is all promos, and the rest is entrance, and the rest is character work and selling, and that can be said for almost every wrestler. I mean, Stone Cold, you have a few, the Stunner, Lou Fast Press, but the rest is promos, the entrance to the ring, backstage stuff. It's so important. Excuse me. And you have to be able to know your characters so well, like every detail, every small detail you have to have thought of. You have to know what happened on their third birthday that helped shape them towards becoming who they are right now. And a lot of daydreaming, man, a lot of thinking about the guy along those long drives, and just understanding and filling in all the blanks of who your character really is.
Yeah, I think somebody like I really enjoyed seeing that from because watching like the Real World and stuff, like, it was like the Miz, right? Like somebody like him, he was doing that back on MTV, like getting in his character. But like you said, the character's super important, and sometimes, well, a lot of times your memories aren't about what happened in the match and things like that, right? You see the Hogan power up, everybody can do, oh yeah, Macho Man voice, right? And or a Dusty Road voice or something like that. And I mean, I feel like there's not that many memorable characters right now. I mean, I don't know like how much wrestling you watch these days, but do you have a take on that? Are there a lot of memorable characters? Do you think maybe you just need to search for them more, or are they as memorable?
I mean, right now Roman's an awesome character, right?
Yep.
Josh Alexander was a guy who's not huge on the character work. Mm-hmm. And that's only because he's a quiet guy naturally. And even Dave Bautista, I'll give you an example. He reminds me of Josh a lot because quiet guys, shy guys, like just Josh is a family guy. Yeah, I don't remember much of Batista's like pre-tapes and promos. I know his entrance and stuff. But he's remembered for his stuff in the ring. But Josh Alexander's a guy that is based, his popularity is based on his wrestling, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But huge, Sami Zayn is a pretty big character guy.
Oh yeah.
Karrion Kross, pretty big. For Impact, yeah, Frankie Kazarian, I think he's a interesting character. There's more. I'm trying to think. Mike Bailey, he's known for for me, it's that smile, He's interesting. Sammy Callahan, good character.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I guess it's still out there, right? So that's one.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Everybody has a character, right? But it was a good question. It actually caught me off guard with regards to who's known to be like a character like back in the golden era. I gotta think about that more.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I guess that's kind of what I was getting at, right? It's kind of hard to pinpoint those, like, hey, who do you know for sure? Because like you can't really imitate that many guys these days, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of like my fandom, right? Again, it's ever evolving, ever changing, so it is what it is. I'm not going to stop watching, but that's just kind of the comparison I draw there. Now I do want to talk about I watched an interview you did recently, and you make the analogy of the Louis Vuitton wallet, right? And how are you willing to put in the work for it and things like that. There's a lot of wrestling now. There's a lot. And some of it, people like put like videos of like indie wrestling out there, and I'm just like, ooh, it's not, great. Obviously, you want to get your feet wet. You're trying, but I think a lot of people are out there and they want to do the whole I'm a rock star, I'm a pro wrestler, I'm a famous guy thing, and they need to go up in the oven and bake a little bit more, right? I mean, do you see a lot of that? I mean, you have your own school and you're getting people prepped,
Yeah, it's weird because people think now that like I just need that one viral video, to become popular. But I mean, you could be the best wrestler in the world. There's no guarantee you're going to be popular or successful or make money. But the fact that there's digital platforms everywhere and they're allowing people the chance to become viral, people that never would have been viral before because they never would have made it to TV. But now you don't have to make it to TV. So the digital age has produced a lot of wrestling, which is good for the wrestler that wouldn't have made it to TV kind of thing. It's tons to digest. And probably a few people that, shouldn't be popular because a clip can go viral. A 7-second clip can go completely viral, but that person has to have another 10-minute and 53-second match.
Yeah,
but they might not be ready to seduce an audience with their wrestling ability, but they were just good enough to go viral for 7 seconds, And I think that's what happened to AEW in the beginning a lot. All these indie stars. And then people get through their whole matches, and you're like, "Damn, this guy sucks." But you're like, "But he's popular in the indies because of that clip,"
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Actually, now you bring it up. Yeah, I wanted to be a fan of like some of the stuff AEW was doing, and that was my thought exactly. I'm just like, man, like there's a lot of people that probably shouldn't be on TV right now. Obviously, yeah, they got their talent there that. They're well seasoned and things like that, but I just don't see it with some of them, and I wonder, if kind of like how do I put it, having so much access these days, right? Because you talked about before it was hard to break in, it was nobody saw behind the curtain unless somebody showed you, right? But now it's like you can find a lot of different avenues in, including those viral clips and whatnot.
Yeah. Also, I don't know how many schools there were back in the day. I imagine there were fewer. But yeah, you can just Google pro wrestling school near me, and sure enough, there's a few close to you. And but who are those guys coaching?
Right.
How far can you make it? You can't take someone to the promised land if you've never been there. So the quality of professional wrestling is really diluted these days. You have a lot of guys that are unfit to be coaching anybody and anything, and they're taking people's money. and they're producing some shitty wrestlers who then go on to nowhere and open up a school themselves. And now you got like it's diluted even more. Like the small details aren't being taught sometimes.
Yeah. It's like kind of like when MMA blew up, right? Everybody opened up an MMA school, right? Everybody's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I wrestled in high school and I did a little bit of MMA back in the day, but, amateur fights and things like that. And I remember going to gyms like, and I would go and roll with the instructor who's supposedly a black belt. And I'm like, I have no experience. And I just tapped you out, and you're right. It's kind of like that. Maybe now I'm seeing it maybe like for pro wrestling where it's like, you had a little tiny bit of experience and, now you're making yourself the instructor and you're not producing anything, of quality. Right. So I assume that's definitely not the case at your school. I want to talk a little bit about your school, right? It's Battle Arts Academy.
Yeah, Mississauga, Ontario, and this September is going to mark 10 years that we opened. Of course, we were closed a couple of years, for COVID, like everybody else, or on and off. But and even with proper education, it's still not a very high success rate in terms of those that make it to the big leagues. People come in and some people get married, some people have careers, some people, their parents say that's enough. They get injured a couple times and they go, I got to get on with my life. So, there's a lot of people that start out the journey that don't finish that as well. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes there's guys that are awesome. They may lack a particular social skill, or they may just, one of my old tag partners, he had a bad, some luck. Like he was going to get hired, broke his leg, and it took years for the opportunity to come around again. And then he got into an argument with somebody in the office, or he didn't get an argument. He got in shit for something, just an honest mistake. And it took, years again for the opportunity to come around. This is somebody that was definitely good enough to make it. Got over everywhere he went, looked like $1 million, and didn't make it, right? So there's guys that deserve it that aren't there, and there's guys that don't deserve it that are there. So
for sure,
everybody's journey is totally unique too. That's there's guys that can go to developmental and get discovered at an NCAA camp, but mostly everybody's journey is pretty individual.
For sure. Now, is there anybody, that you're looking at right now that you're like, hey, that's going to be a star, right? I know you're like your daughter in NXT, right? And, but is there anybody, you're really looking at right now that you've worked with, that you've helped get ready? They're like, hey, they're on a pathway to success right now.
Yeah, I have a few guys. I'm in Canada, right? So, there's an extra layer of like, what's the word? Resistance. You have to get a U.S. work visa to break into the U.S. And how do you get one of those unless you're working at a major company? A lot of small indie companies can't afford visas. So to get so popular in Canada that they hear about you in the States, that's pretty difficult too. But we have a stacked, the Ontario indie scene is packed with, there's several of them that could do really well in the United States. I got a couple, man. I got one guy, Matt Black, John Gonzalez, Joe Mack, Lee Costa. These are 4 students off the top of my head. Timmy O'Connor is amazing. He's coming back soon. They could be in NXT tomorrow. Karu, another one of my wrestlers. Big guy, 275. I have a huge list of guys that are really talented.
Very cool. Now, really quick, I think one of the things I picked up on, and again, one of your other interviews I listened to, is that people thought the Santino Marella accent was real. Like they still kind of trip out when they hear you not use the accent. How often does that happen?
I just saw a guy recently. Like I live in, I don't want to say the middle of nowhere, but I live in a low population density, and I'm walking down the street, and this guy's like, "Just, are you Santino Marella?" And I was like, "Yeah." Like, what the hell? Like around here? And I could see him listening to me, and his mind going 100 miles an hour. Like, this is not his voice, you know. But yeah, I mean, when I'm on TV now, I'm in character again. My voice is a little raspy right now because I laid down with my son a couple of hours ago and I dozed off. So this is my like wake up voice. So I apologize.
Yeah.
But there's enough content out there with me in my normal voice these days. It's surprising, but somehow some people have never heard my real voice, and yeah, they still get shocked.
Yeah, like I always love those those wrestling things where you find out later on like what that's what it was. Like for me, for example, the most recent truth I found out was like Sergeant Slaughter wasn't really in the military. I thought like no, he was a Marine. He was GI Joe. Like no, he was in the military. Right. And I think a few years back, I was listening to like the Sean Mooney podcast and I'm doing the math in my head. I'm like, when the hell did he go to like the military? Because he was wrestling. And so it's always cool to find out later on. I was duped. What's that?
Kamala.
Oh, yeah.
That was great. Hear his regular voice. You're like, what? No.
Mm-hmm. Scott Hall, right? I was like, what? He's not Hispanic? He looked like a Cuban dude. Like, how is that possible?
Yeah. Scott, that's a good, yeah. Not too many guys have different voices though these days, or different accents. Like Rusev is Rusev and Kozlov is Kozlov. And if anything, they try and downplay their accents, I think sometimes. I'm trying to think. I know Kofi Kingston used to do the Jamaican accent back in the day, so we laugh at that now. But yeah, I'm trying to think who else would do that. Who else is different?
Yeah, I mean, even anything like that, it'd be kind of a trip to find out that like RVD wasn't really a pothead, like.
Oh God, that one you can bank on.
But last thing I wanted to throw out there real quick. Obviously, you had a pretty successful, pretty long career, right? And this is, the typical $1 million question here, but do you feel like, hey, I'm going in the Hall of Fame at some point?
Everyone asks me that. I don't know. There's a lot of people, well-respected people that are pretty confident of going in. I don't know, I hope working for Impact doesn't take away from that anymore. Man, if it happens 10 years from now, that'd be cool. Because my daughter's 27, but I got also a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. And I just wrestled in front of my 4-year-old for the first time at the Rebellion pay-per-view last weekend. And it made me realize I want to wrestle a little bit. Just for him and then for my younger daughter, just to give them a memory. My son's only 4, right? I don't know. Do you remember shit from 4 your whole life? I mean, a wrestling match is a big thing. You might remember that, or have pictures of it. But I probably have to wrestle when he's like 7 or 8, just to make sure he remembers the event. So I may have to wrestle for a few more years sporadically. And give them some lifelong memories.
Hey man, just one more Royal Rumble appearance for a couple seconds. That'll do it right there.
I would like to come, especially because a couple of years ago I came back as Santino in 2020. So I'd like it to actually come back as Santino. I think people would really appreciate that.
Yeah. As a fan, yeah, definitely. But I also, wanted to throw in that. Yeah, I definitely feel that you've had a Hall of Fame career, and it'd be really cool at some point to see you get in there because, sometimes you think about the characters that maybe didn't headline WrestleMania and things like that. And they're still really, important to, the TV that you watch growing up. Like I loved like guys like, Brutus Beefcake, right? Where somebody might say like, well, Brutus Beefcake wasn't a great wrestler. Well, I mean, I don't know. That's your opinion, but he was entertaining, you know? And so, you know, you had a very valuable part in that whole era, I guess, ruthless aggression era is what we're calling it, right? Because that era, I think, was kind of slept on. People, you know, they reminisced about the golden era, about attitude era. And during the, you know, the ruthless aggression era, you know, people were on the internet always bitching and complaining and things like that. But now that they're, you know, it's been a while, people start to really appreciate it. Same thing with like early day TNA, you know, people are like, oh man, that was so cool back then. But back when it happened, people were shitting all over it, you know? And so I think, you know, you're going to get a lot of people realizing like, hey, that guy was really entertaining.
Yeah, I think, for example, you use the analogy, like I always say, you know, Tito Santana, Greg the Hammer Valentine, everyone knows they were huge characters from that time, and they weren't in the heavyweight championship picture. So I was a big character, a memorable character from that era. I think it's ruthless aggression, and it overlapped on the PG era. So the PG era, there's a lot of guys that couldn't do their shtick because it was, you know, offensive or swearing, and Santino was very PG friendly. So yeah, I was used a lot at that time. I lost my train of thought there, but the Hall of one day. So if I'm active for a few more years and they call me, it'll be great if it's a little bit delayed, because at least my kids can come to the Hall of Fame ceremony and you know, hear the people chant Santino. And it's funny, my son a couple of days ago, no, yesterday, he starts calling me Santino, like he thinks he's funny, like he is. No one chants for Daddy or Anthony, but you know, there was a nice Santino chant when I got to the ring last weekend, and so he was obviously he remembered that, and it must be incredible. I can only imagine to watch your dad get in the ring and wrestle.
For sure. All right, so just to close this out, man, where can people find you, watch you, anything like that? So you know, we can continue getting that entertainment.
Yeah, right now, Access TV, man, Impact Wrestling, and that's it, man. I'm just trying to keep a low profile these days, spend as much time with the babies as I can, because they're growing up so fast. And
yeah, on the Twitter and Instagram, anything like that?
Currently, I can't access it for some reason. There was a problem, and I can't remember the email I first started it with, or if WWE started it, but they wouldn't. I'm looking at my computer. I have to follow up with these emails because I'm locked out. So right now, it's Instagram is the Milan Miracle, and that's it, man. It's a little bit of health and fitness, a little bit of wrestling, a little bit of my life, and that's really the only one I'm using these days, anyway.
All right. Well, I really appreciate it, and I want to thank you for joining me. Definitely a cool little, you know, bucket list moment for me, because I was a fan.
Oh, thank you, man. It means a lot.
And for everybody listening at home, I appreciate it. Thank you. Fuck you and good night.
Subscribe to the Ignorance is Strength podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Like, follow, and share on Facebook and Instagram at Ignorance is Strength Podcast, and on Twitter at The Ignorance Pod.